North American ice sheets melting.
It's a time of great change, and the climate has been warming and the glaciers retreating since about 18,000 years ago. And around about 11,000 years ago, there is a really rapid shift back into very cold temperatures. And so this warming is halted for a period of about 1,000 years. Folks that were here between around about 10,900 and 10,200 years ago are a group that we call the Folsom. We don't know what they called themselves, of course. They left no written records. But we call them Folsom because their distinctive spear points were first recovered from a site where they had killed a number of bison up by the little tiny town of Folsom, east of Raton.
What do you think is important for us to know today about the Folsom people?
They were around for probably upwards of 700 years. So their lifestyle, their adaptation, if you will, to this set of environmental conditions was one that was very successful. You know, today we talk about sustainable lifestyles, and this was probably a good example of a lifestyle that was quite sustainable, provided that you were willing to move frequently, cover a lot of ground. You're probably not, ever occupying what we would consider to be a permanent village, but just camp after camp after camp. The other thing that's interesting about them is that they made some of the most stunning spear points that we see in all of North American prehistory. They're often out of very beautiful stone. They're most of the time very beautifully worked. And it may be just an expression of what they saw as beauty. It may be an expression of respect for the animals that they're hunting. As a member of a small, highly nomadic group, you have to depend a lot on your relations for when times get tough, or maybe just when, the once or twice a year when all of the small groups that have been operating independently for most of the year come together. That would be a time when you could build and cement relations with other small groups, and that might include the trading of raw material, exchange of mates, building those kinds of social and to a degree economic ties that would help you be a successful hunter-gatherer, is to say.
So you find an artifact. How do you identify it as being of the Folsom period?
The most distinctive thing are the spear points. They're called fluted points in the sense that on both sides they have one large flake that is struck at the base and driven up towards the tip. And it creates this groove.
Wow.
Fluting shows up nowhere else in the world but in North America.
Oh,
and it has its origins with a group that we call Clovis, and they are probably the ancestors of Folsom. Folsom folks take and refine this fluting technique to the degree that virtually the entire surface is the scar from that flute.
So it really is
so
an
they're
art
very
form.
distinctive.
Yeah.
They're very distinctive, and we only see those points from sites of the Folsom culture, which, as I said, just dates to this narrow time period.
A little slice of time, yeah.
And after that, it's gone. We don't see it again. Well, with Folsom, you have no pottery. You have no architecture. You have stone tools, but they're stone tools that are designed for an entirely different lifestyle and set of weapons. So it's really hard to say, there's this clear line.
Right.
Having said that, we suspect that there is at least every good chance that Folsom folks have descendants in our contemporary cultures in the Southwest. It may be just a very, very small sort of input, but if you look at it from the perspective of Native Americans, a lot of their traditional stories talk about how things were in times past before they reached the areas where they live today. And some of these groups talk about a lifestyle where they're subsisting on wild game, wild plants, and always moving.
What do you think we would have to discover to really, really know who the Folsom people were?
One of the things that would be great would be to be able to find sites that have just superb preservation. a Folsom occupation in a dry cave. These people could have been superb hide workers, hide painters. So we really don't know what these people looked like.
So no DNA evidence.
No
we
DNA
have.
evidence. I really would like to see what the people looked like, because ultimately it's the people and their behavior that we're interested in as anthropologists. Pretty clear that they're moving south, but where do they go from there? We're still debating how people get into North America. The traditional model has Clovis, or the ancestors of Clovis, coming down between the Laurentide and the Cordilleran ice sheets. In other words, up in northern Canada. As the melting begins at 18,000 years ago, the Cordilleran retreats westward, the Laurentide ice sheet retreats eastward, and they open a corridor between them. So the traditional model has people coming across Beringia and then down this so-called ice-free corridor. Once they get south of the ice sheets, they appear to spread. And you have to accept the fact that you have people in here at the end of the last ice age.